Animals to coexist, we must secure spaces and create corridors to give animals room to roam. By protecting these wild spaces, we can coexist with elephants, because together we can do better.
Good evening and welcome to The People Decide. Tonight we take a step back from the immediate political contest and look at something much bigger, Zambia's democratic journey, where we came from and how far we've come and where we are going. Our conversation tonight takes us from the one-party state to the birth of multi-party democracy in 1991, then brings that history right into the election we are experiencing today. Joining me tonight are two voices coming from very different points of Zambia's political journey. First is Mr. Akashambatwa Mbikusita Lewanika, a politician, businessman, author, and one of the prominent figures associated with the movement that fought for the restoration of multi-party democracy. And Mr. Akashambatwa comes from a family deeply rooted in Zambia's political and traditional history. His father, Goodwin Mbikusita Lewanika II, served as Litunga of the Barotse land from 1968 to 1977 and belonged to a generation that witnessed Zambia's transition from colonial rule to independence and the early development of the Zambian state. Tonight, we want to hear not only from the politician we know today, but from the young Akashambatwa, the young Zambian who experienced elections under one-party state, witnessed limitations of that system, and eventually part of the movement that helped us, or usher Zambia rather, into the multi-party era. Alongside him is Kasebamashila Kaseba, somebody who I think you've become familiar with. The last two shows we've had in the last 2 days, he's been my guest. He's a media consultant, political analyst, research journalist, and satirist who has been with us from Election Day Eve. Mr. Kaseba brings the contemporary perspective, the political environment we are witnessing right now, the conduct of this election, the role of the media and institutions responsible for protecting integrity of the vote. So tonight, we deliberately bring history and present into the same conversation. Mr. Akashambatwa Mbikusita Lewanika, welcome to The People Decide. To start with, it's a great honor. Thank you so much for joining us.
The honor is certainly mine, and it is a pleasure. Such a comfortable place.
Thank you, sir. And of course, Mr. Kaseba, this is no new environment for you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm also, I think the honor is sitting with the old man.
Yes.
As in living history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we, as you have introduced, it's a comparative analysis. 30 years, 30 elections, 7 presidents. Yeah.
Indeed. Certainly a show you will engage in and at least get one or two things. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us. Let's begin with the history, because sometimes to understand where we are going, I think it's also important we first remember where we came from. But I mean, let's start with you, sir, Mr. Akashambatwa. Let's start with your father, Mr. Goodwin Mbikusita Lewanika II. What was it like growing up as the son of the Litunga?
Well, I grew up, you only became a Litunga after I was 20 years old in 68, but in 1948, 20 years before that,
yes,
when I was born, he was a senior welfare officer in the mines, also an African community leader, founder of the Quito African Society, founder of the Northern Rhodesia African Congress. The Northern Rhodesia African Congress was founded in the same year I was born.
Okay.
He was also one of the early the earliest African to be involved in promoting trade unionism, because in the middle of World War II, I think the Labour Party in England was assumed it was going to form government.
Okay.
So in their solidarity, they had sent someone to Northern Rhodesia to promote trade unionism, and he partnered with him. So in the same 1948, when I was born, the first two African trade union organizations were formed.
Okay.
The Storekeepers Trade Union and the Northern Rhodesia African Mine Workers Trade Union. So you could say I was born in the on the seedbed
Right.
of the trade union movement, the political movement towards independence, and the social welfare movement. In addition to that, of course, my father was the son of King Lewanika I.
Yes.
So, of course, in the home, that also came into play.
Okay. So we certainly do have royalty in our presence. What did you learn from your father and his leadership? What sort of tradition were you brought up from, and as well as public service? What are the lessons you remember vividly?
That life is about public service, I must say.
Okay.
I never knew anything else except public service, because even my mother, although she was a school teacher, by the way, she was a school teacher, found a school mistress at Usakile African Mine Workers Primary School.
Okay.
Our headmaster was Mr. Harry Nkumbula.
Oh.
And our co-teacher was Mr. Simon Kapwepo, who was teaching adults while she was teaching children under the headmastership of Harry Nkumbula. So education, public service is all I was directed into. And I remember when twice after the death of Mr. Nelson Almango, his brother, and who was one of the first Africans in the Legislative Council in 1948 also. The year I was born was the year when the first two Africans went into the Legislative Council, including Mr. Nalmango.
Wow.
When Mr. Nalmango died, it's the first time I saw my father cry. But in between his crying, he told us that he's also going to die, and he will leave us nothing except education and the capacity to public service.
Okay. Take us back to your first experience voting. I know the conversation we'll have today borders a lot around elections. So what do you remember the first time you cast your vote?
First of all, the Northern Rhodesia African Congress had two slogans.
Okay.
The slogan, which was common among all the Congress movement organization in South and Central Africa from the South Africa, was one man, one vote.
Okay.
The second slogan was leadership through team spirit. So that the vote, the struggle for independence, assumed that once the Africans have this vote, they would hold the key to their political, economic, and social development. That's how precious elections were. So people were struggling for the vote. That's what they went to jail for, died for. My first, and also, let me say, my mother was the first African woman to register as a voter.
Wow.
And of course, my father was also registered as a voter. The two of them and one other Africans were the first one to register as a voter. My own registration of voter is that when I came back from school overseas, my first job was in Ndola, indigo milling.
Okay.
In 1975, I registered, and the registration was just a small piece of paper. But the first opportunity I would have had to vote was in 1978, by which time I transferred to Lusaka. So I didn't exercise my right to vote in 78. The first time I actually exercised my right to vote, I'd registered at Roma in Lusaka.
Okay.
And I voted for a frog, because the only choice was between a frog, a drawing of a frog, and the face of a handsome, tough-looking man called Keke.
Oh.
So I did vote in 1983. the candidate I voted for lost, who was the frog. And this next time I voted was actually in 1991, 31st of October, when Zambia returned to multi-party democracy. I also voted in 1996,
yes.
and in 2001 and 2006. In 2011, having spent my whole life with a heritage of how important voting was the last time I voted in Zambia. Because in 2015, 2016, 2021, I found that truly in my heart of heart, I had no choice. So I was really a very perplexed person.
Okay.
In that sense. So the vote, that is my history and voting.
Wow, interesting. You experienced the elections under the one-party state. What was fundamentally different about voting then compared to voting today? I know you've mentioned that you haven't participated since.
Yeah, well, in 1983, when I voted for a frog, I was a very annoyed voter, because it was quite clear to me that this is a mockery of what our forefathers fought for. If you have no choice, then really the election is just a mockery.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy with that. So maybe that fueled my commitment to campaign against the one-party state in order to recreate a situation which was promised to us of having genuine election with genuine choices, and where the vote really is meaningful, and assist the citizens to be in the driving wheel of the direction of the country.
All right, interesting. Mr. Kaseba, listening to that history, do young Zambians today fully appreciate the one-party state, what it meant, and what the return to multi-party politics actually represented? What's your take on that?
Well, no, we don't as young people. Yeah, because as young people, we want to be pioneers. We don't want to acknowledge others as pioneers or heroes or founders. It has to be us. And listening to him, one of the things that kind of caught me is the issue of the frog.
Yes.
We have chatted with him behind on the issue of where there is one candidate in an election, that candidate goes through unopposed.
Yes.
That is what it is called. That is what the language is. So how do you have one candidate who did so much to destroy competition to go and vote, to go and contest against a frog? Okay? And so when you have a situation like that, do we then, as young people, as you ask me, how we have appreciated all that, haven't we recreated, as I started to argue yesterday and before yesterday, haven't we recreated the same system, the same trickery of the one-party state, even where you are going to have the other people as what? As just as symbols. No better than a frog, or even getting zeros. Okay? Where the ground is not even. So, there are certain things, as I argued yesterday, that the one-party states had some advantages that we have given away or given up. Okay? So like right now, we are in an election, the 10th from 1991, where we are not doing better than it was in 1991. Or even in 1988. Because Kaunda cut his term.
Had his term cut.
Had his term cut.
Okay. That is another argument.
Grammar.
Yes.
No, I would not go by him because he was an activist to force the cutting. So I want to use Kaunda as the subject.
At least we are able to do that peacefully. So
Yes.
we grant him the thanks that he did not push us
Yes.
to where we needed.
Just like the other one. No, I will not say it to please him, that he is the one who released political prisoners. Right now, we have recreated political prisoners in an election. I think he is going to assist us that the last time someone was contesting an election from prison is Kapwepwe in 1970. Is it? So he will give us the date. Now, here we are. We have presidential candidates knocked out by the police. One is still right now, as we speak, in detention. When an election is supposed to carry the mood of forgiveness and reconciliation, and it's not after the election. It is before, during. That is the idea of election. It's all about soft power. But right now, the election is all about hard power and military hardware and police. So when you look at it, well, we are happy to have him to help us do the comparative analysis. Some of it as it happened in the past, because he lived it. But when you compare and look at it closely, we are being shortchanged.
Right. I'll go back to you, sir. Allow me to call you Aka. Growing up,
Please,
I do
please
remember
do.
that you were called that. So if I may, this evening, I will call you that. What made you decide that Zambia needed to return to multi-party politics? Just for the benefit of those that are living the history now
There
and
are two
watching.
paths, two stages. In 1973, when I was a student at Cornell University, I became vice president of the Pan-African Students Association.
Okay.
Which, by the way, the first president was Kwame Nkrumah in 1941. So we found it still alive and well. And at that time, the one-party state in Zambia was declared in 1972. 73, it began.
Right.
And colleagues of mine from various parts of Africa, we decided that the first independence movement had been shortchanged, that we needed a second liberation movement, which will get rid of military governments and one-party states. And some of my colleagues in Ghana and Kenya in 73, 74, 75, we went back. And we embarked on the fight against for multi-party democracy.
Yeah.
But when I did come home, I did work as a director of projects at Indico.
Okay.
And during that period, some of the projects I worked on together with others, of course, was Mansa Batteries, Chipata Bicycle Plant, and others, particularly those two. When we set up the Mansa Batteries, and on commissioning, because it was supposed to be in Luanshya, but the political leadership had a policy that every province should have a major industry. So they instructed us to shift the location from what the feasibility study had said to Mansa. And we had, as professionals, to work out a rationale. Why Mansa?
Yes.
Said, one, we are taking development to the rural areas, we are taking employment to the rural areas, and so on. But after we commissioned it, I discovered that out of the people we employed, only 4 were local, 3 of whom were security guards. The rest we had come with them from Lusaka and Kitwe and Dola.
Okay.
So that worried me. The second bit was that these industries, Chipata as well as Mansa and many others, which were in Indico, were based on the economic theory of import substitution. These days you talk about value addition and so on. In those days, from the 60s, the World Bank, the IMF, classic economists were guiding countries like ours to go into import substitution. Mansa Batteries taught the lesson that import substitution could be actually futile, because it's cheaper to buy a whole battery than to bring it in 10 pieces and assemble it in Mansa.
You're right.
And we weren't adding employment locally and the economy. And when I looked at Pata Bicycle plant, which was also under my directorship, it also had the same business. So when I studied it, it coincided with the period when Zambia's economy, which actually began to reverse and collapse with the coming of the one-party state. From 1973, when the one-party state started, for 17 years when it lasted, only 5 years registered positive net growth. And then we had, in 1963, 73, 74, embarked on loans from the IMF, which first were without conditions, but in the early 1980s, they began to come with conditions. Conditions which demanded that we should balance the budget, and directed that we balance the budget by reducing expenditure on health, on education, and social welfare. To speed up, in 1983, this situation became so bad. One, we were badly indebted and unmanageable debt. The social livelihood of people was in danger, that there were riots over prices of meal and so on. Then I thought that after studying that situation, that's where I wrote this book actually. Its original title was Milk in the Basket, about the malaise of the political economy of Zambia. And during this study, I got to the conclusion that if only people would really have influence over their government, in going back to the original promise and belief that the vote is the key, that if you gave them the vote and had genuine choices, the people then have influence to be able to control their governments from reckless liberalization, from structural adjustment, which was without social consciousness. So given also my background at Indico, and I concluded that that cannot happen under the one-party state.
Right.
So basically, when I came back I went back to school, Boston University this time, and my thesis is one that turned into that book. So when I came back, my company was not happy with me. I was the group director of project for the whole of Indico. To punish me, they sent me to a non-existent company, Zambia Ceramics in Kitwe. As fortune would have it, that's my hometown. So I participated as chairman of the press club, participated in the theater club, in the chamber of commerce, and began dealing with trade unionists. That is really the beginning of my campaign against the one-party state. Those were the ingredients of that.
Okay. When you and your colleagues formed the MMD, what exactly were you fighting for beyond what you've explained, defeating UNIP? What was the vision?
In fact, that is a good question, because truly defeating UNIP was not our goal. Some of us believed that UNIP was betraying itself because it was supposed to be a progressive freedom fighting party. Some people even thought it was socialist, and yet it put us in the bosoms of the IMF and the World Bank, and opened the gate to liberalization, which was without heart. And so some of us actually wanted UNIP to be itself. And we were more for something rather than against UNIP. We were for resetting the promises of independence. During the struggle for independence, the terminology is then that they were fighting for freedom, they were fighting for progress. In the 90s, we changed the language. Instead of freedom and progress, we said democracy and development. That was basically our agenda.
Okay. Let's go back to the times of now. As a political analyst, Mr. Kaseba, I'll come to you now. We often reduce 1991 to UNIP lost and MMD won. Was the significance of that election actually much bigger than a change of government from your view?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thanks. Yeah, I think the 1991 elections, as he has just mentioned, was more or less a reset. As is indicated, it was more of an accident, much more than an intention. That they were fighting for something, then something happened. As we had touched on it, well, Dr. Kaunda was made to respond to pressure to do as the people wanted, and pressure also to do as he himself was promising. Because Kaunda kept boasting of being a Democrat, for example, and that he would leave power anytime. He could even die. And by the way, Kaunda built a retirement house in the year, at the beginning, as I think at the declaration of one-party state, when he should have retired at the end of the 2 terms. That is when Kaunda built a retirement house. And every time, so he had those can we say now, excuses that he would leave anytime. And then that he was ready to hand over to the young people and so on. And he said that for 17 years. Yes. So when these people got together and referred him to a lot of what he had said, and the performance of the economy, the politics and all this, that is how 1991 happened. One of the things, like he brings out the press club, one of the things that also happened in 1991 in terms of media is that media was also more pluralized, and you had a birth of a lot of newspapers, including the Post. The Post newspapers, and is it the Eagle and many other newspapers. And in that very short time, there were about, you were counting up to about 40 papers. And the MMD, in the next 5 years after 91, the 91 of Kaunda, because the Kaunda ends in 31st October, and Chiluba comes in on 31st, it's 2nd November.
Right.
From that period to 96, Chiluba does less than half, or almost that amount of registration of publications. So you could see that within the end, the dying of UNIP, with hindsight, you could now conclude or realize that we had more freedom for the media, or pluralism for the media, than we had in the entire 10 years of MMD. And if you go back to look at the performance of ZNBC at that point, being also forced, for example, to take their adverts, the performance of ZNBC at that point is way better than the performance of ZNBC, which is now what, 35 years later. So 35 years ago is better than 35 years later. The other one, we're just looking at this same book, which is one of the observers.
Yes.
Yeah, we're just looking at, there was nothing like ECZ in the form that ECZ is today. It was just an office, and which was just to be set up to just say, the calling of an election. And would you believe, by the Deputy Chief Justice.
Okay.
And I think as he responds, there's one book he has done on the same. To the workshop that they held to start the multi-party, they had actually even invited the same Deputy Chief Justice. Would you believe that? to really think the Deputy Chief Justice should be the one to go and speak at a conference for the restoration of multipartyism. And they write to him. Can you think of it today? Let's say the lead opposition that Mundubile can call, like right now. Mundubile calls the Chief Justice to say, I have been detained. So that those are some of the comparisons that I can pick out for now, that the impact as we look back and as we are in this election period and as we go further, even from the issue of the announcement of results, like I said, the first program, the initial PVT, the parallel voter tabulation, you can never believe that 35 years later, 10 elections later, PVT is going to be a crime. Or even just someone says the president has a chunsu. You get locked up. Chunsu, just having chunsu is what? You call it
an afro.
Exactly. Just having long hair. And you get locked up.
Let's make comparison. Let's look back now, and I'll bring it back to Mr. Aka. If you look at the situation now and some of the promises that you had made to the Zambians post-1991 and what you envisioned, where do we lie? What's the situation in your view?
Well, I think basically we go back to the promises of independence, which is freedom, justice, and equality for all.
Yes.
This was part and parcel of the whole African liberation movement agenda. That for 500 years, Africans have been almost dehumanized. That one of the mission of the independence movement, the African liberation, was that a day should return when Africans are second to nobody in everything. They have their restored dignity, they have their restored freedom, justice, and so on. So that that promise of independence has just been a broken promise from the beginning to date. The struggle to bring back multi-party democracy was not separate from reinstating that promise. So that you find that we had a critique against the colonial system because it restricted freedom of association, freedom of speech, freedom of organization. And the promise was that after independence, we will be free. But unfortunately, we continued with the Public Order Act. And even on the eve of independence, we instituted a state of emergency. The excuse for it was the Lenshina uprising. But even after the Lenshina uprising had been put down, we had a permanent state of emergency, which first was supposed to be renewed every 6 months. In 1969, Parliament passed an order that it didn't have to be renewed every 6 months. It can be kept at the pleasure of the president. And he was pleased to keep it up to the end of his 27 years term of leadership. So that is a broken promise that we have to restore.
Okay.
Then you find that the subsequent government administration have all failed to reinstate those things that were promised at independence, to really create a multi-party democracy that was intended, partly because in 1991, we only changed one clause in that one-party constitution.
Okay.
And since then, every government administration had abused the constitution by changing it selectively, based on personal interests, partisan interests, and basically in the direction of making the ruling administration have it an easy way to get to be re-elected, and the opposition to get to replace it with difficulties. So that since independence, every administration has made it harder for the opposition to exist, starting with 1969, when after the first post-independence election in 68, Parliament derecognized the leader of the opposition. Since then, every administration has turned the screw against the opposition more and more. And what we have had in the run-up to this election is really worse than a frog, as he say, because for the first time, I hardly know the political party that Brian Mundubiro, whom I've endorsed, is standing on, because it was just a makeshift, because the environment was such that hardly any of our well-known political parties could stand the harassment, the changes, manipulation that have taken place. So that in the end, we were being pushed to a state where I think the ruling party was almost very happy, looking forward to an election in which there will be no opposition. Now, this hodgepodge of political parties somehow has found life, and without having existed for a long period, a formidable opposition grouping has been constituted. And then after it became clear that contrary to the anticipation that the opposition would die, it came to life in a form that had not been anticipated. In the last 4 weeks, in the last 3 months of this election, there have been relentless efforts to undermine it in every way. The final one was where its offices were raided, where the state actually stole the money which was intended to reinforce its campaign. So that it is really a very weakened opposition. As I said, and a vote in which you have no choice is a mockery.
Yes.
Whether it's a frog or a deliberately weakened opposition, it's a mockery. So that this has challenged those of us who've been fighting for such a long time for the fulfillment of the promises that our forefathers gave to, that after we become independent, Africans will really have a genuine vote, would really have a genuine democratic election.
Yes.
And that this is the key to use the power that the people already have to be in charge of directing their governance system in the future. So in that case, one could say it's one of the areas in which we are worse off than we ever were in 1991. In 1991, we were able to hold a conference against the one-party state. We were afraid, but we were brave enough to withstand it, and the system allowed us to do that. So that environment. You are talking about the media. In the run-up, in our campaign, we were able to feature on Good Morning Zambia, on television radios. Although I remember one interview I had with Goreti Maplanga.
Right.
I instead of saying Dr. Kaunda, I said Mr. Kaunda. And one of the two cameramen dropped in shock because they didn't know what will happen to them.
Oh dear.
Although I was I wasn't referring to him in his current status.
Yes.
I had been asked a question. One of our resolutions at Garden was that calling on pressure against the Zambian government. And we were being accused of calling on foreign government to assist us. So I was trying to say, when Mr. Kaunda was campaigning for independence, he had allies in Tanzania, in Ghana, and so on. But because I mentioned him as Mr. Kaunda, the cameraman thought we were all going to be in trouble.
I hope that wasn't the case.
No, we didn't get into trouble at all. I mean, we got into trouble by our own self elsewhere.
Okay.
Yeah. So the media definitely is one change that has happened.
Okay.
In the last week or two, I've been around the country. And when I was in Lukulu, in Kabompo, at the radio station, I had the opportunity to tell them that you should thank me
Yes.
Because before we fought for the return to multi-party democracy, there weren't these television and radio stations that we now have. Indeed, we didn't even have many NGOs.
Okay.
The real NGOs that we had was Girl Scout, Boy Scout, YWCA, and the YWCA only read the Bible, taught knitting, and talked about how to bring up Christian women. They didn't discuss elections or anything like that.
Okay. All right. You eventually became a critic of a party you formed or were part of in the formation, the MMD, and left on principle. What went wrong there?
Well, what went wrong, actually, you can even trace it.
Yeah.
I thought we had all agreed that, yes, we had compromised to change just one clause, but as soon as we are in government, we will change the constitution. So that is what I believed we had agreed. So within months of being in government, I was appointed a minister in November.
Okay.
By February, I think in January, I'd written an article in the Weekly Post, which I did in all innocence, assuring the nation
Yes.
that we are still committed to changing the constitution, which has too much power in one office, one center, and so on. This was a 700-word article, but the Times of Zambia made a story out of it,
Okay.
which they put in headline that the president has too much power, dash Aka.
Oh.
And that was on the front page of the Times of Zambia on a Monday where cabinet meets. So fortunately, I wasn't in that cabinet meeting, but it became the topic.
Okay.
They hammered me until Dr. Sondash came to my rescue to say, the person we are talking about is one of our members. So he will come back. Why don't we discuss it when he's there? This gave me a chance to understand their attitude, and I found out that they had made a mistake. They gave me responsibility for the Times article, which I hadn't written. So one of the first quarrels was over the constitution.
Okay.
My president was not very happy about that. The next quarrel was over corruption. As well as the privatization and hindered privatization. So within the first 9 months, I had real policy differences over one, as I've said, the deprioritization of the agenda to change the constitution, the fight against corruption, the liberalization of an economy. As I said, some of us wanted a return to multi-party democracy because we were unhappy with UNIP taking us in the arms of the IMF. And yet MMD embraced that. That became one of the major quarrels in it. Then there were issues of what I hate the word tribal, negative ethnicity and imbalance in terms of regional representation. Those were the reasons that I gave. And then the collective responsibility. By the way, the response of my president to my article, after I explained that I hadn't written the Times of Zambia story,
Yes.
but I had written that article.
In the Post.
Instead of talking to me, called the secretary to the cabinet and asked him to write a circular to all ministers that ministers cannot be allowed to write articles except with the approval of the presidency.
Okay.
So I found the burden of collective responsibility for things that I disagreed with not acceptable. So I resigned, not to resign from MMD, but to resign from cabinet in order to be a backbencher and be freer to debate these things.
Right.
And it was only a year later that we ended up finding that democracy within the party itself was so deficient that it was necessary for us to form another party.
Okay. Nice journey there. Mr. Kaseba, is that one of Zambia's recurring problems? movements that begin with democratic ideals, right, but change once they acquire that political power?
Yeah, I think what changed or degenerated or reversed or regressed is
there's been different political parties, by the way. So I'm trying to establish whether this is, do you see a similarities? Is there a pattern in other parties?
Yes, I do. Because right now we are already in a de facto one-party state.
Mm-hmm.
And we are in a de facto one party, one man. And that man has a name. And right now, the Wamiayaya, which has a date, which is 2090, okay,
mm-hmm.
or which has a target of 5 million votes, that is clearly not achievable. That I had, at least I was also politically conscious by 88.
Mm-hmm.
83 I was not, but by 88, when it was Wamiaya, vote yes. You start with a one party, one Zambia, one nation, one leader, that leader. We are here as we were. So, one of the things and the changes that as I listened to him, and which I chatted with some, I did a Facebook post on it as well,
mm-hmm.
is as he talked about the founding of the Rhodesia African National Congress, or Congress, in the year he was born, and Kaunda being recruited by his father,
mm-hmm.
and him growing up to, so to speak, politically fight Kaunda, and Kaunda getting to fight the father, the one who recruited him to politics.
Mm-hmm.
What is interesting is that the discipline and the restraint, for example, his father did not, I'm yet to see where there was a proper clash between Kaunda and Lewanika.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Kaunda had respect. Just like there was no clash, I've not read where Kaunda ever attacked Aka. So when Kaunda started being challenged by his children's age mates, or his own children, okay, as he has already described, by the time he was born to look up to the Kaundas as his parents.
Yes.
Because, for example, Panchi Kaunda is older than him.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking at a situation where we have H.H. Maureen Mwanawasa, kind of age mates, and H.H. and Michael Kaingu, kind of age mates. Then you have a situation where H.H. is going to work with Chipo Mwanawasa, and H.H. is going to blast off Iris Kaingu. That which, from what I've just described, all these, the Kumbula children, and never, as I have said, I was conscious enough politically conscious by 91 to follow that. Even 96, even up to 97, 98, I had an opportunity, for example, to interview Kaunda. And just the thinking, the reasoning, and his attitude. What's the expression? You give the devil his due. There's something that Kaunda showed that we have lost and we don't have in our generation and in the generation like the HH generation ahead of me. So the issue of missing out goals, like the way the UPND started from Azokan to HH, and the movement starts as the United Party for National Development, as going and taking over as a breakaway from MMD, and over the same third term situation. So the grounds on which MMD was born from UNIP are almost the same grounds on which UPND was born from MMD.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can tell you what, he can tell you himself that he cannot find his place in UPND. And UPND will not even recognize him or even recognize that it is a child of MMD. Or even he has just talked about democracy and development and pluralism and so on and so forth. Does UPND espouse any of that? No, it doesn't. Does it recognize itself in the founding principles of the UPND? The UPND of today? No, it doesn't. So when you have someone who contests the election 6 times, and then he feels more entitled, and he wants to compensate himself for the time that he lost, to perpetuate a Wamuyayaya, we are back to the very thing that was ended in 1991. So that is where I have submitted that we are regressing, we are going backwards, we are going down the chute, and at a far much more rapid pace than we should. Part of our argument, every time I engage him, is how so much goes into history. But I've found myself caught up in his history because his reference to history is our repeat of mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
How we keep going down on the principles. He wants to say, here are the mistakes we made.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go that way. But that is what we are insistent about until it hurts us, until we commit the mistake. Even then we don't. We don't refrain ourselves to say, well, this is a mistake or this is a solution that has been given to us. So the issue of going backwards, at least I have him to confirm that some of the things, as I lay claim yesterday, some of the things indeed we are going backwards, and we are going backwards dangerously. Even as we speak right now, to have the nation almost feel nothing wrong about what is going on, about the result transmission, that today, 30 years later, we are going to be slower than a fax. Even when the law provides for electronic transmission of results, how can manual counting be slower than electronic transmission of result? Or totaling be slower than the initial addition as it happened in 1991 or 96 or even in 2001? How do we become slower? And all we do with the social media is to fight the negatives of social media and not utilize the positives of social media. The same as the issue of how we want to fight the negatives of so-called tribalism and not exploit the diversity. That is what all developed societies have exploited.
All right. I'll go back to you, sir. Starker. 35 years after 1991, as he's alluded to, we're in this situation. How can we correct it?
Yes, in fact, on the positive note, we have yet, and we've had this opportunity, which we have now several times.
Yes.
And we have not quite, in my view, taken advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it has come. And this is the opportunity of elections to link up with what we began with,
yes,
the value of the vote. Our parents believed that the reference on the multi-party option, one of our resolutions was to demand the release of political prisoners.
Okay.
Who were Shamwana, Goodwin Mumba, several others from that generation, but also Kalimbwe, who was imprisoned in 1973. And by the time he was released after our demand, up to date, he remains the longest serving political prisoner in Zambia, and nobody even knows him. And today, if I say, address it to a current president, the same demand, please release political prisoners. And I hope you will be as gracious as President Kaunda, who responded to our demand so positively that within days after Garden House, Mr. Shamwana and his group, General Tembo and his group were released. So even today we are in the same position. We are asking the current president, please release political prisoners. And I'm so ashamed that on my way here, I learned that the presidential candidate I endorsed a few weeks ago has been summoned to the police. In the same way that President HH used to be summoned to all sorts of things, the same thing that it led to when he was the victim. It may lead to the same thing. So please save us from that. Is his commitment to the idea of resetting Zambia, starting with reconstructing the constitution of Zambia, complete outcome where nobody is overly advantaged or overly disadvantaged, but is able to work with the constitution as something that is of service of us. So that is very, very important. It's an opportunity this year to do that. We have had this opportunity several times. Unfortunately, the changes to the constitution since 1991 have been patchwork, they have been sectarian, they have been personal, they have been partisan, and they have focused on making it easy, as I said earlier, for the ruling party to retain its position as a chief administrator of the government, and to make it difficult for the opposition to do so, to the extent that there have been laws specifically aimed at killing the opposition. So we are still on the same place, but fortunately we still have the same opportunity we had at independence in 1964 to use our vote to change the course of our country. We may not have taken full advantage of it in the past, but that opportunity is there again. So that really I plead with the people of Zambia, the voters, to utilize 13th August 2026 as a moment in which you can reflect on this power which we hold as citizens, which we haven't used fully. Sometimes we have abused it, allowing people to intimidate us, to buy us, to cheat us, and otherwise to waste our votes. There is another opportunity where this vote can be utilized to really change Zambia. If we fail, then the next election will be dealing with the same issues: corruption, tribalism, unequal development, and so on. But if we reset Zambia in terms of power sharing in the constitution, which is fair, we would have given ourselves powers not just at one center, but at all levels of government, all types of government, including the traditional authority, to share in the authority of governance, to share in the ability to save ourselves in terms of public services, so that all the power of our public services are not in one person or in one center or in one part of the region. So that is the positive part.
Right.
The answer to your question is yes. Unfortunately, when the UNIP government took over from the colonialists, they gave us a whole catalog of what's wrong with colonialism. And some of that catalog problems, they carried on with them. They capitalized on them to stay in power. When MMD did the same, we fought against we campaigned against the state of emergency. We campaigned against the Public Order Act. But when we came into government, we actually reintroduced for a moment. I'm happy to say that I was one of the MPs who, although in government, opposed the return of the state of emergency. But we have failed to remove the Public Order Act. PF under President Sata campaigned against the Public Order Act. And when they got into power, they loved it and kept it. UPND, which had been in opposition for such a long time, had been tested, had an opportunity to ensure that no other political parties would be tormented or suffer disadvantages that they suffered, but they've failed. Instead, they've taken on the rules, the policies from the government they criticized and made them even worse. As I say, to the point that tonight we are in a situation where the leading contender for the presidency is being summoned to a police station for announcing that he has won, for claiming that he has won. And the reason he had to do that was because the Electoral Commission was not doing its job. And it's proof that it didn't do its job, that within hours of announcing the ban on announcing the result, they've now announced the banning of the ban, which means they've recognized their mistake. If they hadn't made that mistake, there is no way a responsible person like Brian Mundubile would not wait for them. So they should just take up responsibilities and save Zambia from being tormented for nothing, and get on with their job of administering this election in such a way that we get the results as soon as possible without any hindrance or without activities and announcements that raise suspicions as to whether or not they are not trying to cook up the results.
Analysis. I know you've touched a bit on it, but the suspending of the counting and announcement of results. Did you ever experience something similar to this in earlier elections? And how do you interpret that decision based on the facts that they gave or reason?
So if any violence should lead to the decision they made, they should have done that much earlier. Secondly, it is a very reckless decision because given our history of elections, this is a tension-filled period. So you can't be making careless statements that raise up anxieties if they are not necessary, particularly if they are wrong. And those who've been making statement changes, for instance, there was a statement about how a tick would be now accepted. All those are chaotic things which cause tension. And those who are causing tension should not be the same people who are arresting other people for responding to the tension that has been caused by the people arresting them. So I believe that our situation is really bad. This is why we need a reset. We need a reset. When we talk about the constitutional reset, this is inclusive of the electoral regime. I listened to the other interview you had, I think yesterday. A very important point was made.
Yes.
That every election has been followed up by a report. And those reports have not been paid attention to. Indeed, since 1991, by the way, for the first time, outside observers were allowed. And they all made reports on how to improve the electoral. The same happened in 96, the same happened in 2001, 2006. All our elections have had. The African Union, the SADC. I think our governments, without exempting any of our past administration, just looked at those reports to see whether they would declare the election free and fair without reading the other critical observations, the critical advice and lessons that have been taught. I believe as part of resetting Zambians constitutionally, we must grow on, read back and review all the constitutional review reports, all the post-election reviews, to see that we are not missing any wisdom or any self-correction mechanism, so that as we reset the constitution, as we reset the electoral, we take on board all this wasted advice that has been made by many prominent people who meant well. Unfortunately.
So you cannot have violence in Mutendere and ban Matero. That's nonsense. You cannot have violence at the totaling and you ban announcement. It doesn't make sense. You cannot have localized violence and you ban the whole nation. How? So these all decisions by ECZ, as we again touched on yesterday, all decisions are subject to consultation and they can be appealed or petitioned. Okay? So ECZ is being dictatorial. Elections are about soft power, negotiations. It's not about hard power. It's not about muscle. It's not about military hardware. No. Elections are a peaceful means. Someone has posted what he said in the 96 petition. Okay? About how elections are there to diffuse the tension. It's not to heighten the tension. So, the ECZ has been dictatorial. That is not a channel to go through to get a free and fair and peaceful and a transparent election if your decisions cannot be questioned. So like I am showing you, just like the way the media has suffered. People are talking about social media. They have a complaint. Oh, we all meet on social media. Even the same people that are wrongly regulating social media are also on social media and they are posting things. So this is the same thing where you intend to shoot the person this side, you have stray decisions, you kill the person this way, and you say it's a stray bullet. How are stray bullets hitting accurately? How do stray bullets manage to hit people right on the hearts? Okay, so this is where what is in contest there? If there is violence in some place, it shouldn't bring the cancellation.
Yeah.
Okay, why should you have the cancellation or the ban arbitrary? Okay, you ban.
Okay, so the commission later reviewed, and as of this evening, the suspension has been lifted. That shows some flexibility.
No,
right?
it's
No,
not.
except that I think what's important, your first question was, you quoted the justification they made.
Yes.
That justification is not a justification. To simply point out that clause so says I have powers to do something, it does not excuse you to justify why you have applied it.
That power.
Because that power exists every day. It has been existed since it was written. Why wasn't it done? So when it is done, it must be justified, it must be reasonable, and the election commission is sometimes our hope is that it will be a good referee who maintains a win-win situation, to which all the contenders are comfortable. The contenders are not supposed to just hear the announcements. For instance, there was an announcement that a tick is acceptable, which was totally unconstitutional. There was this announcement of this stoppage of counting and so on. It was not preceded by any, as you say, consultation, prior inquiries, alternative ways of dealing with it. In other words, in their justification, they should have told us what other alternative, because this is a very drastic decision.
Right.
In a tension-filled activity. So that, if the worst thing is like, if you ask why your parent is punishing you, so why are you punishing me? He says, I have a right to punish you because I'm your father. Without telling you what you have done wrong or why the punishment is more suitable and so on. So that abuse of power starts with using it without reasonableness. Abuse of power starts with use or application of power simply because it is there to be applied.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I was about to say
Mm-hmm.
the 72 hours cannot be supported. So when is it the 24 hours? Where are they quoting the 24 hours? Within the same 72 hours, you knock out. So when they gave the 72 hours, they said that is not to say we will wait for the 72 hours.
24 hours.
Eh? No, initially when they announced this, there is no provision for 72 hours to say the election results will be fully and finally announced as they trickle in, as we batch them up, we'll finish by 72 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Where did they get that?
Monday.
Where did they get that? It's not provided for. So from that 72 hours, you knock out 48 hours, which you reverse in how many minutes? Okay?
In a few hours.
In a few hours. Again, where is the reversal provided for? Who reverses? Which law are they reading to say, now we have reversed this? I wanted also to bring in the context. He's made reference to where they had the Garden House meeting, in which their Garden House meeting was on the 20th and the 21st. And they made those demands for the release, including of convicted coup plotters. Okay? It was not just political prisoners. No, convicts. And Kaunda responded in how many days? 4 days. These,
despite having had the powers to arrest them, he had the powers to keep them there, but he made himself available to petitioning and to considering other people's petition. We did not take a single ounce of his powers. He still had them, but did not exempt him, or he did not exempt himself from being able to listen to others.
Yes.
Okay. Now, so in that group, I just wanted to finish that group.
Yeah.
I've said
just quickly, because we have a little time remaining. I also wanted to squeeze in another question.
The category of people that were pardoned: coup plotters, Unza rioters, looters. He reinstated, withdrawn or cancelled passports. The multipartyism demand for voter register update. Okay? Referendum, option and dialogue. They demanded that they needed dialogue from their Garden House. We want to meet you. He responded to all that. And so that is why he says, I'm not accepting from a position of weakness, but it is a position of extreme strength. So he conceded to almost all their demands and went an extra mile. So there are about 6 or 7 very critical things that Kaunda conceded 4 days after their meeting.
Okay, quickly, as we wrap up as well, I know we've touched on the ECZ, but also let's look at the other side of the picture. Political parties conducting their own parallel tallies, and some making claims about the election before the official announcement by the ECZ. Where is the line between verification and prematurely declaring victory?
Well, I think that there would have been no declaration of victory by anybody other than the Election Commission of Zambia, if they had done their job. Now, if they are working and thinking at the same time, changing statements at the same time, in other words, if you are sleeping on your job, ECZ, the citizens of Zambia may not wait for you until you get your act together. You should have gotten your act together a long time ago. And don't keep changing statements, because where there is a vacuum in people discharging their responsibilities, nature abhors vacuums. So that the cause of, in other words, the real cause of this development is the performance deficiency.
But clearly, sir, there should be some level of patience as well, right?
No, you can't be patient to all nonsense. You see? In other words, yes, some people may be patient, but if somebody just comes out of the blue and announces that we have stopped counting, you are patiently waiting for them to finish counting. You are patiently waiting for them to make the announcement. Then while you are patiently waiting, they say we are no longer counting. That is extreme provocation. I would hope that people would be able to withstand such provocation without responding to it. But if they do, they should not be punished without punishing the person who causes the loss of patience.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can't correct a wrong with a wrong.
Yes, you can't correct the wrong with the wrong, but the original wrong cannot be declared faultless while the wrong that sought to correct it is taken to prison or taken to the police. In other words, if the police were being fair, they should also call the chairperson of the Electoral Commission to say, why did you change your mind? Why are you? And then, of course, why did you respond like that? You can't just be so well set in looking at somebody's problems and so totally blind in looking at your own problem.
Right.
Yeah, I think we dealt with this. I wanted to quickly add to.
Sure, please. Go ahead.
We dealt with this 3 days ago, where I gave you the example that Anderson Mazoka of the UPND, the founder president of the UPND, did a similar thing to the MMD. In 2001, Mazoka declared himself president. The reaction was totally different. It is not the police that responded. It was the politician. And I think one of the headlines, Vijay is the one who responded and they said, Mazoka is mad. And it ended there. And in a few days, I was working for Times of Zambia. I was able to visit Mazoka and interview Mazoka. Okay? They told him, the law provides for you to petition. Here is what you are supposed to do. No one sent police to him. Okay? So, when a person, like we have said, a declaration, as I said the other day, is provided for in the law. It's official, it's done by a specific person. You can't just like, whether it's Kadansa or Muriokera, declare yourself and get arrested. No, that is not provided for. Because there are people who are mandated. So, like we were chatting on the issue of confidence. You were the one pushing me about people being overconfident. And I was telling you, no, overconfidence is not a properly right thing. But you cannot arrest a person for overconfidence. For all these characters that are...
But yesterday you shot it down. You said it is a problem also to be overconfident.
Yes, it is a problem, but it is not an offense. And that is what I'm saying. Even in this situation, the law that applied or did not apply to Mazoka, the leniency that was applied to Mazoka, this is what the UPND do. I am using that example to say it was the UPND that found itself in a similar position of delayed results and contestable results. And all the other politicians did was to refer them to the legal process. And here's an example here of 1996 elections, which he petitioned. And it's there online. You can read the judgment to the petition and some of the questions that we have raised and in our discussions. And the 2001 election itself was petitioned. The 2016 election itself was petitioned. HH spent the whole period he was in opposition not recognizing, never conceding defeat. Not once. Okay? No, and you remember there was the issue of not recognizing the president. They almost made that an offense for HH, that he had refused to recognize the president. Or not just refusing to concede defeat. HH never conceded defeat to anybody for 5 times until the 6th that he himself won. Now, when you have the similar situation of where someone refuses to recognize the results, you refer them to the process.
Well,
and not.
We could go on and on. I'd like to thank you so much. It's been very insightful. A special thank you to you, sir. Aka,
Thank you so much.
I think I did get an allowance to call you that.
Yes, please.
Very enlightening conversation. You've taken us through and taken us back to Zambia's political history and also your analysis on the current situation, as well as Mr. Kaseba, who's been with me the last 3 days. It's been absolutely, a learning curve. So hopefully the powers that be on the other side of this conversation could pick a thing or two and we could see some changes. Otherwise, to both of you, thank you so much for joining us this evening on The People Decide.
Thank you so much.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, all the viewers out there. That's where we end our show this evening. Do catch us for another show pretty soon. Good night.
Hi, Mwizukani here.